All right, so we are still in the integumentary system. We are going to be looking at, which was chapter 6, by the way. We're going to be looking at the glands of the dermis. This is slides 32 through, hey, I said that wrong, 23 through 28. My dyslexia kicked in on that. I'm sorry. I will change that before I make a video of it, make that into the video. But anyway, I realized what I've forgotten on the last one. The last video, we talked about the dermis and we talked about the hair, the nails, and I said there was a third that for whatever reason I was having a hard time remembering, and it is the glands, because we have a special separate video just for the glands. So sorry about that. So the first gland that we look at, and we looked at this in lab, were called sebaceous glands. Sebaceous glands are a holocrine type of gland. And remember, we talked about that. That means the whole cell ruptures when it releases its substance. It says it's usually associated with hair follicles, and that is very rarely is it not. I don't know of a time when it's really not, but it's almost always associated with hair follicles. It's going to produce a substance called sebum. Now, sebum is a very oily, fatty type of fluid, and as it says, it's going to have a lot of cellular debris, and that should be obvious since it is basically the result of the whole cell rupturing. So of course it should have a lot of cellular debris. It is what helps keep the hair and skin waterproof. It is a very important thing. But this is, anyone who's had the unfortunate pleasure of suffering with acne, this is the cause, and it is absent on the palms and the soles, mainly because it's generally associated with hair, and there's no hair on the palms of the hand and soles of the feet. Now, this is a picture that kind of shows them. You can kind of see it a little bit. This is considered a cross section of a hair follicle here. This big part here that is mainly this looks like adipose tissue, that is a sebaceous gland. Again, don't stress too much about that. I did keep this particular slide in. Like I said, generally I don't go over these clinical applications, but I just want to point out, because I get asked a lot, acne itself is a disorder of these glands. Okay, I'm not worried about you knowing that. I'm not worried about you knowing well, I do want you to know acne is associated with sebaceous glands. Whether I test you on it or not, that's something that you really probably should know. And that's why it starts at kind of at puberty, and these sebaceous glands kind of go haywire. Again, not worried about what's going on, but just wanted you to know that acne and the sebaceous glands were tied together. So the other types of glands were going to be sweat glands. We call them pseudoauriferous glands. They are going to be throughout the skin in general, and there's basically two types. There are some special ones, but basically two types. They're mainly in the dermis. Occasionally we'll see the apocrine gland when we go over it. Occasionally can get down to the hypodermis, but generally they're in the dermis. And the two types, the two main ones, are eccrine and apocrine. So eccrine sweat glands, which are also called merocrine, remember this goes back to the type of gland. Merocrine merely secretes a substance. The cell doesn't rupture or have any cellular loss with it. So merocrine glands merely secrete a substance. And since it is a merocrine type gland, sometimes that's what they're called. But generally the name is eccrine. They are by far the most numerous. They are going to be their fluid that they produce is mainly water. There will be some salts and occasionally wastes. Again, just as a sidebar, if you ever work in the hospital where you're dealing with people with kidney issues, whether it's elderly people or people with, younger people with kidney issues, they generally will smell like urine, because if the kidney isn't able to filter out the urea and the various wastes, then our body's next way to get rid of it is through these glands. And so that can happen, but that's not normal. Generally, again, some salts, And that's why one of the things you need to make sure if you're sweating a lot that you need to drink more than just necessarily water. You need to have something with electrolytes, and that's where Gatorade and Powerade kind of help. But if you're not sweating, don't drink those because they're not good for you unless you are losing these. Um, anyway, that is not a very smelly substance in general. These eccrine or merocrine glands are all about regulating body temperature, and so they're ducts, because these are exocrine glands. They're ducts open to the body surface, and so these are going to produce that little watery fluid. It gets out on the surface. Again, since this is responding to the fact that I am getting warm, my body vasodilates those dermal capillaries, the dermal papilla, the capillary just underneath the epidermis. And when the sweat evaporates, anything that goes from a liquid to a gas or changes phases needs an energy source. And so that water that's on my skin uses the energy source of the heat that's in my blood to do that change from liquid to gas, and that pulls the heat out and cools me down. The next type are called apocrine, and again, they're called apocrine because they are an apocrine type sweat gland. They are going to lose a part of the cell in the process of secretion. Now, these are going to be located in only really two areas, axillary and groin areas. They are basically uh, associated with hair follicles. And these hair follicles are going to be in the groin and axillary area. And if you think about it, that makes sense. These are associated with puberty. These are when these become active. That's during puberty. Um, and it says they're called apocrine, but secrete by exocytosis. We're not going to get into that. I want you to, for me right now, remember that they're an apocrine type sweat gland, and we'll cover that if you get farther into it. Um, these are emotions, and pain is an emotion, but they're emotional. Again, puberty. So eccrine or merocrine sweat glands I'm going to try and erase some of this stuff. Merocrine or eccrine sweat glands are associated with regulating body temperature. They are going to be throughout the body, and they're active from the time you're born until the time you die. It might vary a little bit, but they're active that whole time. Apocrine sweat glands, they're going to be active during puberty, and then from then on. They're associated with hair that's located in the axillary and groin areas, and they secrete an oilier substance that smells. You can remember you smell like an ape. Is kind of the clue. And if you've ever been around, especially a little boy that's going through puberty, they generally smell like a little ape. And it is an emotional type of gland. It responds to emotions. Now, there are two other types of these sweat glands that you need to know. I'm not going to get really far in depth in them, but you do need to know these. Now, the last one on this list, I am going to imagine most everybody understands. Mammillary glands, they secrete milk. They're an as weird as it might sound, they are a specialized type of sweat gland. And then the other one is going to secrete earwax. And this is a sweat gland called the ceramnithus. I probably butcher that name. And today, for whatever reason, as I'm making these, my pronunciation area of my brain seems to be not working real well. So anyway, ceraminitus. And anyway, I generally can say it correctly, but in here today, as I'm going over this, not getting it. And so forgive me, but it is what it is. And so I'll just keep moving on because it'll just frustrate me. So this is a picture kind of showing these, and I want to point out the apocrine sweat gland, the three that we've kind of gone over: merocrine, apocrine, and the sebaceous glands. So the sebaceous gland, again, we're going to talk about that as we looked at that associated with the hair follicle. Um, the apocrine gland is going to be found deeper in the dermis. It's going to be associated with the dermis hypodermis region. In general, it doesn't get into the hypodermis, but it can, but it is going to be associated down with that deeper area of the dermis. And its duct is going to go up, and it's going to be associated with hair follicles. And those hair follicles are going to be, again, axillary and groin. Then we look at the counterpart, which is the merocrine gland. And the merocrine gland is going to be usually associated midway in the dermis. It's going to be definitely more superficial than the apocrine gland is. And their duct goes out to the surface. And that's because it's trying to put that watery solution right on the surface so it can evaporate. This kind of gives a breakdown for the main ones. And so if you want to look through this, this is a good little chart to kind of make sure that we're kind of on the same page. So anyway, sorry for my mispronunciation of some of these. Serumniferous. I keep wanting to put an F in there, but anyway, I tried. So I hope everybody is having a good day and good luck with this, and I will see you in the next video.